Goodness gracious, what a week it's been for Cities Skylines 2, with the developers opening this week's update with an apology for some, frankly, unbecoming comments that were made on the forums last week. We'll also move through to look at what they're laying out for the rest of this month, December, and the major update that we're still expecting for Cities 2, and a few other things around the edges. With plenty to discuss, we should just jump straight into this bad boy. So the doozy of an opener for this week's word of the week is, as I say, somewhat of an apology. They say last week in my comments on the forum, I tried in my very and sometimes too direct way to say that we made different design choices with Cities 2 compared to its predecessor. And we understand that some may prefer one over the other or wish we'd gone in a different direction. My poor choice of words did not make it clear that this, of course, does not apply to any bugs or issues you're experiencing, and naturally this led to some frustration, and I apologize for this. They say they still have a lot to do for the game to meet its performance standard and polish, and they're working hard. Now, if you're scratching your head and thinking, boy, what did they say to warrant apologizing right at the front of this week's update? Well, we have to step back in time just a few days to the discussion around last week's update. The particular point of discussion, as you'll see on your screen, was a comment made last Thursday. It reads, "Thanks for all the feedback. When it comes to the gameplay and simulation, we set goals for the game, and we have reached those goals." I was going to pause there for a moment. I'd encourage you to reflect on that opening line. When it comes to the gameplay and simulation, we set goals, and we have reached them. Okay, now let's continue. Surely there are issues that we're looking into and fixing bugs, but the overall gameplay experience is what we aimed for. Cities Skylines 2 is the better game compared to the first one. And this is the real doozy. Quote, "If you dislike the simulation, this game just might not be for you." End quote. Now, in fairness, they go on to talk about how there's a good chance that the bugs that you're worried about will either already be fixed or they'll be fixed in future, that games are subjective, that there are more patches on the way, that performance isn't quite where they'd like it to be, that's why consoles were delayed. Oh, and also that modding support is an important part of the game and they're going to roll that out as soon as possible. It should come as no surprise to you or me that this left a bad taste in almost everybody, at least everybody who reacted to its mouths. I mean, of course. What were they thinking? I have to imagine it's after a long day, putting up with a lot of crap, you've been reading all this negativity online over weeks and weeks, and you sat down at your keyboard and thought, look, if you dislike the simulation, it's just not for you. And maybe you woke up the next morning and thought, geez, maybe as the CEO, I shouldn't have said that. I have to imagine that's how this played out, because I just don't know. But it is unbecoming to kick a dog while it's down, particularly a stray dog that is operating in a simulation that isn't working. So let's kind of park that, put that to one side. In fairness to the CEO, Marina, I should also go back just before we move on and show you this clarification as well. The following day, they said, "In my attempt to manage expectations, I failed miserably, and I apologize for any hurt feelings." Did Whittle put him's get his feelings hurt? Cities Skylines 2 is currently what it is. It has been released, and we can't change how the launch went. This is a fact we must live with. And it's sad that expectations were not met. Now I can only assure you that we will keep working on the game and release patches, of course. The marketing campaign is something we went into with honesty. That's rare for a marketing campaign. We believe what we said about the game and we're excited about what we've achieved. Now we must read the feedback, understand where the game fails, and try to fix it. They say the game won't change into something it's not, but they can make their vision and intent come across clearly to everyone playing it while continuing to fix the things that are broken. I hope you'll accept my apology and extend your patience just a bit more to give Cities 2 a chance. And that's all that we'll go through. There are more comments on the forums. You can go and have a look yourself. Of course, I'll have everything linked below so that you can follow it up if you'd like to. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that this is just unacceptable. Period. And not to sound like too much of a broken record, but I really can't help but feel that all of this, or at least most of it, could have been sold if you'd simply called it an early access release. No modding tools, a broken ass editor, bugs galore, and performance that my GTRT whatever it is 4090 can't handle, probably surmises an early access experience. Again, look, I'm not gonna beat that dead horse, so let's move swiftly along to the rest of this week's update, because believe it or not, there is actually more to address. The second paragraph, though, is perhaps much more of a communications fluff piece. Maybe they should keep this one in their bookmarks folder so that they can go back to it and find some wording that doesn't offend people. In a nutshell, it says that Cities Skylines is all about the community. Devs want to be present on the forums, listen to your feedback. Their goal is to make the game great. Everyone in the community has different personalities and backgrounds and preferences, and they can't please everybody. But everybody makes the community richer. So keep being creative, keep being interested. The community and modding are what makes a Colossal Order game, and they promise that they're working as fast as possible to get modding support to us. With that sort of nice, happy piece, while also, of course, with that sort of underlying notion that modding still isn't in the game, let's move through and talk about what's going on with patch updates, the one we've already received, and crucially, that major one, hopefully maybe, that we're expecting later this month. First, a quick note. They say in the meantime, we released a whole load of gameplay bug fixes last week, notably, of course, looking at the mail service, storage, transfer, and bugs related to pathing. I made a full video about that. You may or may not have already seen it, so we've kind of already teased all of this stuff out. I won't spend any more time on it here, other than to say that it was the largest update we've received so far, though still falling into the camp of a minor patch update on Steam rather than a major one. It didn't address performance, but as they say, it did address a lot of bugs. Overall, it was a good patch. I'd like to see more of that kind of thing moving forward. The next patch, and the last one for this year, is coming out next week, they say, before we start our holiday break on the 18th of December. In other words, the patch is coming out week beginning Monday the 11th of December. Probably a more palatable way to express that. The patch will have performance improvements. Nice. This will be one of the first times, I believe, that we've actually seen some reasonable performance improvements, hopefully inside of a patch, outside of some discussion around the LODs. They say that they mentioned previously these improvements, and indeed we have discussed them before. And of course we have, though briefly, for example, in last week's Word of the Week, the now notorious and controversial, if you don't like it, it's just not for you update, they said that they were working on rendering geometry, and of course we've heard discussions around the level of detail and LODs and all kinds of things in and around the simulation and performance. Obviously, I'll be waiting with bated breath to see the patch when it comes out, and I'll be sure to update you as soon as I can. Moving back, though, to this week's update. They say the gameplay, bug fixes will also sort of try and be squeezed in there as well. The focus is on the characters, and a dentist has been consulted. I feel like that's some kind of inside joke, and I don't get it, so the words mean nothing. I'm going to move along. There will also be improvements, they say, in the level of detail models for selected assets, as we've discussed, as well as geometry improvements for better performances and reduced memory usage. Asset-related work will continue next year, but we should already have a good amount of improvements ready before the holidays, they say. So that's what we can expect from performance, maybe bug fixes. They do also provide some insight on the gameplay side of things in the final paragraph of the update. Drilling down into some specifics, they say that they're looking into airports having problems with the export, and they're working to fix some of the statistics. They've also received reports of even more stray dogs now located at train stations, and while they can't promise they'll have all of those issues fixed before the holidays, they say that they're aware of the pups being left behind, and they'll make sure their owners learn responsibility eventually. Man, they... One minute it's an apology because the game's not for you. Next minute it's like these cheesy jokes around pups. They can't keep up with the pacing. Hopefully it makes more sense to you in this video form. They say please keep the feedback and the bug reports coming. We'll go through all of them. And finally they conclude by saying in the next Colossal Order word of the week, we'll go over the final patch of the year and what we can plan to work on next year. So some insights into 2024 for Cities 2, as well as that final patch. And in this final section, I'd like to do something I probably shouldn't do, as we've learned from this video. Don't say things in public. I'd like to share my 2 cents worth, and actually I've got 4 of them. First up, kudos for apologizing. It isn't easy. Like, it actually isn't. It's often emotionally charged, and I respect that. Though, call me old-fashioned, but I do like to see the word sorry in an apology. I think it's one thing to state, I apologize. It's another thing to say to somebody, I'm sorry. Secondly, a few things that haven't really been addressed, one of them being the slow simulation. I hear you talk about it in the comments again and again. I had a good couple of replies with some people last week. Fun fact, most of the clips in this video are sped up extraordinarily. And I don't just mean in-game, where I'm allegedly running at 3 times speed, I mean after the fact. Some of these sped up to 900%, times 3, allegedly running at 27 times speed on your screen, though it just doesn't work. The game seems to just completely grind to a halt around 100,000 people in my city, and I know that I'm not alone. And finally, I guess I would say, is Cities 2 really the definitive over Cities 1? Again, to rehash my 4th and final point from earlier, I think that an early access label could have made it a genuine marketing campaign, could have made it an honest, at least easier to understand experience. You would know what you were getting into, or your expectations would be leveled. And finally, animations are one thing that I think are categorically worse in Cities 2 than Cities 1. Now, there will be a few exceptions. Categorically might be a bit of a sweeping term, but take the firefighters, for example, which don't come out of their trucks. Cyclists, which don't cycle, because bicycles seem to not exist in Cities 2. Though I was pleased when I was recording this video to see that at least the firefighting helicopter does get out there and spread some water around. Albeit sometimes in a little bit of an unusual way, in this case just kind of pissing on the side of a building. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.